Hi, I think we are missing still most of the registered participants, so let's wait just a couple of minutes and then start the webinar. Do you hear us? Well?
Yes.
Thank you. Hello, welcome to the MAASiFiE project webinar. My name is Jenny Eckhardt and I'm from VTT Technical Research Center of Finland. And I have here my colleagues Aki Aapoja and Lasse Nykänen with me. And then we have from Chalmers University of Technology, we have Marianne Carlson and Jana Sohor. And so let's start. So we are recording this webinar, so it's available afterwards. And let's take questions in the end. And we have also this chat. We might take some questions from the chat during the presentations, but if the schedule allows. But otherwise, we'll have questions and discussion in the end of the webinar. So here's our agenda of this webinar. So first, I'm gonna talk something about MAAS and the MAASiFiE project. Then we'll discuss about MAAS services and MAAS business models. And then we have impact assessment and technological issues. And then we are going to present the MAAS Roadmap 2025 and discuss about roles and responsibilities. And then finally, we'll tell about next steps in MAAS implementation. Okay, so here's about our project. Our project is financed by the Conference of European Directors of Road. There's a research program for mobility and ITS. And it's funded by national road administrations from Austria, Germany, Finland, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and United Kingdom. And our project is a 2-year project, just about to finish. And VTT is coordinating the project, and our project partners are Austriatech from Austria and Chalmers University of Technology from Sweden. Okay, here's some background and motivation for MAAS. So we have a lot of changes ongoing in our environment. the importance of owning a car is decreasing, and people are more accepting and utilizing sharing economy services. And also there's a lot of modal shift targets to increase public transportation, mainly for emission and congestion reasons. And then there's a lot of sustainability targets in general ongoing. Also, smartphones are coming more and more common, and then there's a lot of different mobile applications arriving all the time. And then digitalization and automatization are also developing. And as our environment is changing, that requires and also enables new transport services. So there are new mobility services arising, for example, car sharing and ride sharing services. And also there's a strong IT support for new mobility services is available and also required to have these new services. And with these mobile devices, it's possible to have access to services at any time and from everywhere. And also real-time information is making these services, it's available nowadays and more common, and it makes these services more fluent. And there's also automated passenger and freight services increasing. And this mobility as a service can make this use of alternative transport modes more attractive. Our MAASiFiE project has defined mobility as a service as multimodal and sustainable mobility services addressing customers' transport needs by integrating planning and payment on a one-stop shop principle. So practically, MAAS is about multimodal transport and shared mobility, multimodal travel information, and integrating booking, ticketing, and payment. Our project structure is presented here. So the work package 1 is about project management and dissemination. Then the work package 2, MAAS Roadmap 2025, it's like an umbrella to other work packages 3, 4, and 5, and they interact and work in parallel. And the work package 3 is about business and operator models. Work package 4 is about impact assessment, and work package 5 is about technology for MAAS. And our work has been guided by Project Executive Board and especially the Finnish and Swedish road administrations. And VT is the coordinator and is responsible for work packages 1 and 2. And Austriatec has been responsible for work packages 3 and 5, and Chalmers for work package 4. The main content of the project has been to create MAAS vision, the Roadmap 2025, and how to implement MAAS. And it has been the main work in the work package 2. The MAAS state-of-the-art has been studied in work packages 2 and 3. There has been a survey and a literature study. And then MAAS service combinations in different geographical areas and business and operator models have been studied in work package 3. Work package 4 has been about key performance indicators and impact assessment. And work package 5 has studied different technologies for MAAS, including architectures, interoperability, and roaming. And we have had this kind of method for this roadmap in collaboration with other work packages that we have had a series of 4 workshops. The first workshop was national workshops in Finland, Sweden, and Austria to create a MAAS vision. The second workshop has been impact assessment, where we have been discussing about MAAS pilots or services, how they have been succeeding and what have been the impacts. And also this has been in Finland, Sweden, and Austria, like also the workshop 3 in these 3 countries, where we created national roadmaps 2025 and also defined some roles and responsibilities. The workshop 4 was an implementation and consolidation workshop, and it was an international workshop where we created the European MAAS Roadmap 2025 and also some future activities or recommendation needed.
Well, good afternoon and good morning from my side as well. My name is Aki Aape, coming from VTT2. As for the ecosystem, the mobility and the transport ecosystem, the vision is to see the whole transport sector as a cooperative, interconnected ecosystem providing services reflecting the needs of the customers and seamlessly combining different transport means such as private vehicles, public and collective transport such as bus, metro, subways, light rail and car sharing, and also biking and walking. The boundaries between different transport modes are going to be or probably will be blurred or can be disappear completely too. The ecosystem may include the transport infrastructure, transportation services, modes, transport information, ticketing and payment services. The purpose is no longer to improve the transport system by building more capacity, but by using the existing capabilities and capacity in a smarter and more efficient way. The figure on the slide illustrates a general high-level overview of MAAS ecosystem. A business ecosystem can be considered as a network that includes a vast number of loosely interconnected participants who benefit from each other and their mutual effectiveness. It can be argued or assumed that MAAS ecosystem consists of 4 different levels. First one is a public and regulatory level. Second one is a transport and logistics service providers, so it can be said supply side. Third one, mobility services, who can act as an integrator. And fourth and the last one, end user, so demand side. Moreover, all of these 4 levels are tightly tied to some other business sectors such as tourism, culture, sports, since traveling is derived demand created by the need to achieve something or get somewhere. And when it comes to the service combination and MAAS services and the packages, MAAS may include a variety of service combination of different transport modes, sharing services and parking, or even services from outside the transport sector. Even though the service combination depends on the local context and market demand, as well as the business idea and offering of the MAAS operator, typical features of MAAS service combination in different geographical areas were identified. The main aim of MAAS in cities and in urban areas is to reduce the ownership and use of private cars to reduce congestions, emissions and parking problems, and of course enhance urban planning too. MAAS services in cities are typically based on existing public transport enlarged with sharing and rental cars, city bikes, parking facilities and so on. In suburban areas, MAAS aims at reducing the need for a second car, for example, to increase the car capacity utilization rates, and of course on-demand services, park and ride services, sharing services and first and last mile services are integrated with MAAS services in cities, and which will be a characteristic in suburban areas. In rural areas that are sparsely populated, people usually own several cars and distances are long, causing low capacity utilization rates and transport inefficiencies. Hence, the objective of MAAS in sparsely populated areas is to generally increase efficiency and utilization rates. This also is important for municipalities and organizations responsible for statutory social service transportation and school transportation because of service level and economic aspects. MAAS in rural areas aims at sustaining appropriate service levels despite the low number of travelers and providing required accessibility. In services in rural areas, emphasize on on-demand services, taxis, buses, sharing services, and also first and last mile connections to long-haul transportation. Additionally, non-transport services combined with MAAS increases efficiency and could include parcel deliveries and library services, food and medicine deliveries as well. And as for the MAAS on national or international levels, it aims for seamless traveling which can be connected to additional services. Services typically combine air traffic with other long and short haul transport and may include all-in-one packages combining, for example, accommodations, event tickets, activities, and other ad hoc needs. Obviously, this is already familiar to the users of packages holidays, but not necessarily for individual travelers, which numbers are steadily rising in the near future and are already now rising. And then some words about the pilots and ongoing services. As it can be seen, a number of services and pilots are going on and are even going to be established shortly. Services can be considered as a MAAS services, but there can be kind of MAAS related services as well, such as car sharing, shared taxi services, which in the end are a vital part of MAAS and the ecosystem as well. And when it comes to the Europe, especially Finland and Germany stand out with multiple services, MAAS services, but also multinational services like Uber, Lyft and services, for example, DriveNow and Movil that are run and managed by the car manufacturers are worth noting. However, from Finnish point of view, it seems that demand-responsive driving seems to be or is at least considered important aspect since multiple Finnish services include that feature compared to services in other countries.
Okay, so it's Jenny Eckhart talking again. So I'm going to present you MAAS business and operating models. So we have recognized that there are different kind of MAAS operators, and these findings are based on the literature and cases that we have found. So there are commercial MAAS operators. They can be just like resellers or like travel agencies, for example, so that they cover different transport modes. And then when we have this kind of like integrator model, it's they might have MAAS as their main business, but it might be also that it's just a complementing business and they're trying with these MAAS services to have a better sales on their main business. Then there are also public transport operators like municipality or region owned, for example, like city public transport operator. But then there are also state-owned public transport operators, for example, rail companies. And then there are also public-private partnership operator models. And we have the pictures to explain maybe more. So like I already told, so the reseller is practically having different transport service providers of different modes and different kind of services, and is for like selling them to the user. But then if there's an integrator model, it's also having different transport modes and different transport services, but there's also this kind of mobile service provider, and this mobile service provider organizes maybe a mobile application for ticketing and payment and maybe for routing, and have different kind of ICT, IT support for the MAAS service. Then we have here the public transport operator and PPP MAAS models. So the public transport operator is a transport service provider by itself, but then it also integrates other transport service provider services, and that way can offer more first and last mile services and more wide range of transport services. And there is also this mobile service provider part of it, offering different kind of applications and ticketing systems and others, and routings. And in this public-private partnership, it has also these different kind of transport service providers there, mobile service providers, but it also has logistics service provider integrated in there, offering logistics services. And then there's also social service transportation. So this might be this kind of statutory social and healthcare service transportation. And here's some comparison to see the differences of these, how these operator models works and how they could be in different geographical areas. So this commercial reseller model, it's considered that it would be mainly like travel agencies, so there's not so much added value. It's only like giving different kind of transport services on a one-stop shop principle. And it's often suitable for national and international traveling. Then about this commercial integrator model, it's we think that as it has many services available, and it can be quite flexible how it's organized, and it's actually the newest model. We think that some way exists, that it's completely new actor, this MAAS operator in this model, and it could be suitable for many areas, and probably mainly for urban and suburban areas, but it could be also for national and international MAAS. And both of these commercial commercial MAAS models, they can be based that the operator takes a commission when reselling tickets, or then buys large numbers and resell, and it's based on quantity, the profit they're making, having maybe some price reduction when buying large numbers, or then they might just have a lot of sales due to additional services they are offering and maybe some advertisement. And if the commercial integrator, it has MAAS services as it's like additional, it's not the main business. So then the aim is might be that by selling MAAS services, the main business increases. And with this public transport operator model, we think it's mainly suitable in the cities where comprehensive public transport already exists. So it's not suitable in rural areas where there's no public transportation, or at least not covering well. And yeah, and the main aim is probably that the public transport operator integrates a lot of different kind of first and last mile solutions, and when offering good the whole entire travel chain, then gains more customers for the main transport they are operating. And with this private-public partnership model, we think that it's especially suitable for rural areas, and it's because if there's a public actor involved and they are offering also some kind of statutory social service transportation or healthcare transportation, their aim is to increase the efficiency of subsidized transportation. So they are not necessarily aiming at profits, but they are aiming at cost savings. And here we have found different kind of service agreements that the MAAS operators are doing with the making with the those transport service providers. So they might be reselling to customers list fares. So in this case, they have to have some kind of additional value other than the price to customers, and it might be the combination of the services they are offering. And then they might offer fixed reduction percentage to end customers of the service they are selling. There might be also negotiated services. So the first they depend on bilateral agreements, and a MAAS operator might offer, as they are offering different kind of transport services, there might be a mix of all these kind of agreements with different transport service providers. Okay. Then we are moving to impact assessment. And
that's right.
Muted.
This is Marianne Carlson from Chalmers University, and I'm to take care of the impact assessment story. And as the slides will be managed by VTT, I will direct them so that you will hear that I ask for the new slides from now and then. First of all, the impact assessment started with a literature study where we tried to find out what aspects were included overall in different impact assessments of interventions or new ideas that concerned changes in transport and transport behavior or travel behavior, and also, and in particular then, what aspects were mentioned in relation to MAAS. We could see that overall the main message was that when it came to MAAS, most references referred to, reductions in emissions, congestion, increased accessibility, overall, but also reductions in cost and a discussion on social inclusion and exclusion. The main three areas were the traditional ones, that is environment, social impacts and economic impacts, but we still felt that that was a bit not sensitive enough really to address the benefits and possible negative consequences of MAAS. So we decided to move along and try to see if we could find a more sensitive way to address MAAS. So we therefore went to the next step and the next slide. What we proposed based on other experiences was that we needed, first of all, to look into the consequences of MAAS also on different levels. On a societal level, which is often where we find evaluations, but in particular for MAAS on a business level, which both for private businesses and for public businesses and public transport. And then for the individual users who are the ones who's actually making use of the service and where changes in transport behavior actually happens. So based on that, we made an inventory of what could possibly be different aspects and different KPIs to look into. Again, this was based on the literature study, but also on workshops within the project. So here on this slide you can see some of the aspects that we thought were important. We sent out this as a web survey to different stakeholders and we received an answer where we had hoped to be able to prioritize between the long list of possible KPIs. Unfortunately or fortunately, most KPIs were ranked as important as all the other ones, which I think signify, or we think signify, that this is still a very new area and a lot of curiosity really about what the consequences, what the impacts of MAAS really could be. So what we did, and in the next slide you will see that within the project we therefore had to make a choice. We couldn't in the project look into 50 or 60 different KPIs. We had to focus. And this was actually, this is the short list of what we decided upon. We wanted to look into impacts on an individual level. You can see here, for instance, total number of trips made is of course of interest. If there is a modal shift or not is of interest. If one perceives an increased or decreased accessibility to transport is of interest, and travel costs is of interest. So there's the sort of short list that we decided on an individual level. On a business and organizational level, the number of customers is of course of interest to see whether it actually sort of this service attracts customers, whether the customers are of another kind than the traditional customer setup. For instance, by public transport, we know that often, in some areas at least, we have a certain age profile and also a certain gender profile. We also could very clearly see that there were also organizational changes that might be needed, so that was also something that we put on the list of interesting aspects. And also societal level, you will probably see the more traditional one like emissions, resource efficiency. But we added something that is not always part of the list, and that is sort of legal and policy issues. We know from the experience of different pilots that there will be and are issues that need to be addressed in order to enable the dissemination of MAAS. We then, as is shown on the next slide, went about to try to look into two particular cases where we were involved. So, for instance, here in Gothenburg, Chalmers has been involved with the evaluation of UBGO, well, overall involved in the project actually. And in Austria and Vienna, we had another project that we could look into. Here we first looked into the KPI, whether we could see modifications, and then assessing the actual impact. Overall, you could say that there is, even though there's a number of MAAS pilots or even services or MAAS related pilots and services, the available information on evaluation is very, very scarce. There might be information there, but it's not publicly available. So, or it has not been put together in a format that is accessible enough. So this is something that caused some worries in the project. But overall, you could see here in UBGO, you can see that the project, according to the measurements that we did, we could see that we had a decrease in the total number of trips made. There's a more complex picture behind this, mind you, but this is a sort of summary arrow. We could see that there were changes in attitudes. We could see a more positive attitude to public transport, and we could also see over time a more positive attitude towards sharing. When it comes to, for instance, like customer segments, who were really the customers in this new UBGO service? So when we talk about the business aspect, it's not quite, as I say, it's a new service, so therefore of course they have new customers. But what is important is perhaps are they other types of customers than you would normally find in, for instance, public transport. And we could see that we had a larger share of men, middle-aged men, than you would normally find, at least in Gothenburg. But we also lost some, the very young students who traveled by public transport on a subdued ticket, and also elderly. when it comes to the societal level, these are of course extrapolations. So given that we could see some changes in a number of other aspects, our conclusion was that there was a decrease in emissions and there could also be a resource efficiency, and that arrow is actually the wrong way. So it's easy to make an error in the arrow. But I think we will make a possible modification there. But overall, you could say that given that this is a true picture of UVGO, you can see that there are a number of what we consider positive overall impacts of MAAS in Gothenburg, as we could see in the case of UVGO. There are also some question marks where we don't know, and there are some aspects where we cannot draw a conclusion. The data is lacking, or we cannot extrapolate enough. If we move on to the next slide, which shows the analysis of the SMILE case in Vienna, you could see that the information is much more restrictive. We only have some clear evidence of shifts or changes. But again, what is a common theme here is that, again, the SMILE case has more men as customers than, for instance, the public transport in general has. So it seems as though MAAS attracts at least one new category of customers, whereas it might not cover all customers. And for sure, that's not the purpose either. But overall, you can also see that where we could see, or we could have some evidence, we could see that the impacts are overall on the positive side. Now, based on these two cases, but also a number of additional information from analyzing different MAAS-related projects and in interviews with different stakeholders. For instance, in Finland, a number of interviews were made with different stakeholders involved in projects, etc. We draw a final conclusion regarding what we could see as the overall impacts of MAAS. And if we move to the next slide, this presents the summary conclusion on the levels, the KPIs, and the impact areas, environmental, economic, and social. And green indicates where we could see that the impact, or where we believe at least that the impact is positive. The yellow indicates where we think that it could move both ways, actually, depending on the choices made. And the red was to indicate where we could see a negative impact. And actually, given the color-coded table here, we couldn't really see that it's a clear-cut negative impact of a further introduction of MAAS. But there are some areas where we should keep our sort of eyes open to possible negative impacts. For instance, the total number of trips made. It's not evident that MAAS will always result in a reduction of trips made. For instance, it could well result for some in an increased access to a car, might for some actually be and result in an increase of trips by car. That has been shown. So increased accessibility to transport, which is sort of overall a positive thing, may for some users also result in an increase in the total of trips made. But it's from an environmental perspective then negative, but from a social perspective it might actually have a positive impact. We have another yellow square which concerns the number of customers. There are worries by, for instance, public transport organizations that they might lose customers, whereas other organizations might gain new ones. So here's an issue that should probably be discussed more and also perhaps looked into more. It could also turn the other way. And that, of course, then has an impact also on revenues and turnover. When it comes to, again, the modification of the vehicle fleet, again, depending on the decisions made, for instance, there is a potential in MAAS to sort of focus and be able to invest more in electrified vehicles than perhaps a smaller organization could make, or even if we look into private ownership. But it could also, given the choices made or the decisions made, turn another way. So in the deliverables that will be presented later, you will see that there is a discussion on each of these aspects, turning and twisting the issue somewhat. And I think that turning and twisting is absolutely necessary. Even though this is an overall green picture, I think that we should consistently look into MAAS and see whether we can achieve the green squares and avoid the red ones, and analyzing the consequences of the decisions. Some implications shown in the last slide, or implications. The summary here is really that based on the data, the broader introduction of MAAS seems to have potential to result in overall positive impact, but there are, based on some decisions made, there could also be some negative ones. A few potential conflicts between individual and societal goals, which must be acknowledged, shown also in the table. Overall, in impact assessments, there must be more attention paid to the business level, both from a public and a private perspective. And this is rarely the case in impact assessments in general. But for MAAS and for MAAS service, the business case is essential. The lack of empirical evidence is evidently a problem. So therefore, we propose that a common impact assessment framework or evaluation kit should be developed that would help immensely to make assessments and to be able to compare different types of MAAS for different areas and help develop on the MAAS concept overall. So this is then something that we would like to see, is that the financial bodies, when they are present, should actually demand proper evaluations of pilots and trials. And in Sweden we now have a project ongoing where hopefully at least we will develop some kind of national basis where we will have a common approach to evaluations of ongoing thoughts and ideas and pilots. So thank you.
Then some words about the technology, and Aki here again. It's working, thank you. Well, as everyone knows, the technology and the integration of that into mobility service planning and service provision has become increasingly important for many new services, but also commonly used transport-related processes such as infrastructure and vehicle management, route planning, of course, and as a new services, the mobile ticketing and pricing or even booking. In general, the increased use of smartphones providing increased access to internet technologies is a major requirement for mobility as a service. And under these circumstances, technology findings are based on internet and communication technology requirements for MAAS. And of course also communication networks and other related physical interfaces and legal requirements can be considered essential. And as a summary, it can be said that technological aspects must be assessed and discussed at least in the following themes. So, for example, data requirements like data formats and standards, service requirements, for instance, common interfaces, open application programming interfaces, and the third one, physical requirements that are, for example, wireless networks, so Wi-Fi availability, 5G technology, and already used LTE and 4G technology. And the fourth important thing is the legal requirements, as already mentioned, such like roaming regulations, security and privacy of personal data. And the last thing that is worth assessing as well is the usability requirements, such as accessibility and user interface design and usability. However, more specific illustration of MAAS value chains and MAAS system architectures shown on the slides can be found from the deliverable 5 that will be, at least I guess, available in this week or at least next week. And based on that, on the following slides, I will focus more on wireless networks and roaming in MAAS. And later on, I will present some technical recommendations on open data, wireless networks, and standardization. And then about the wireless networks for mobility as a service. Wireless communications lay the basis for realizing MAAS services. Those communication systems and technologies allow using the services almost everywhere at any time, and wireless networks are, as known, heterogeneous with respect to capabilities, coverage areas, terminal to be used, and usage cost. Even though mobile networks are usually covering most areas where people move, there are still many areas without connections. For example, in Finland, that is relatively sparsely populated areas with many other areas where there's no connections at all. And hence, network deployments are mostly business-driven, and areas with no sufficient usage or populations are prone to suffer from bad connections. For MAAS application and services running on mobile devices, for example, it is important that the applications can be used without internet connections as well. And that is why, for example, ticket machines which may have internet connections could also allow connections to MAAS applications and to internet in a way that the ticket machine requests updates and passes the updated information to the application over, for example, over short-range communication technology such as Bluetooth, NFC, or even Wi-Fi hotspots. This could be useful especially for foreign travelers affected by mobile network roaming charges. And the last thing on this slide about the communication technologies, or the two last bullet points, are the mobile networks that are nowadays mostly based on 3G and LTE technologies that already do not currently restrict development and deployment of MAAS services. However, the next generation mobile networks like 5G will bring or should bring new possibilities for different types of services. And when it comes to the roaming in a context of MAAS can mean using the transport services of other MAAS operator than that is subscribed. The first MAAS pilots at the moment are mostly carried out with a very limited set of transport providers and on a limited geographical area, so the roaming at the moment and nowadays in these ongoing pilots are not mostly considered, but it is extremely important in the future if we think about the international MAAS services. But when it comes to the roaming, it's mostly about the agreements of MAAS operators and agreements between the mobile network operators and of course about well-specific open interfaces as well. And such agreements may define operational geographical area of MAAS operators, what transport modes are allowed to use when roaming, possible additional expenses added to the price when roaming, and how and for how long time client's personal information is handled and stored by the operator roamed. And for data privacy, the ideal case is that no personal data is needed to be exchanged between operators. Well, there might be some exchange, I think. And of course, ticket reservations and cancellation policies must be defined as well. Then some words about the open data and technical recommendations regarding to that. First thing is that the open and standardized interfaces for both user and operator must be defined in order to enable effective back-end communication. The second thing is the access to transport data and real-time information, for instance, schedules, transport vehicles, information about those vehicles, provision of real-time information, for example, delays, travel times, and possible changes in timetables and schedules. And of course, network data like lines, links, and nodes are relevant for routing. And the third bullet point is that the unified and increasingly centralized data structures in different data sources are needed as well. So different kind of information needs to be collected from a range of different sources. The second last bullet is the unified machine-readable protocols for updating push and retrieving pull. So it's a pull and push effect and technology, and retrieving transport information. So for example, RESTful, SOAP, and other XML-based protocols. And the last point is that the more differently available data pools are coming from different transport sectors as basis for optimized route planning and transport safety enabled by the open data. And then the recommendations on wireless networks. Provision of communication alternatives in areas with reduced wireless access coverage with respect to other user applications, like reduced access to wireless communication networks requires alternative access conditions. So it means that making tickets, maps, and schedules for offline usage available. And the second example is to utilize low power and long range IoT communication network for low rate data transfer. The second important thing is that due to the high roaming cost at the moment, alternative ways must be considered for example, more extensive Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi network coverage and probably some Wi-Fi hotspots in transport vehicles. The third important thing to note is that to utilize the upcoming mobile network technology like 5G to make services more personalized and location-based. So future communication technology allow making use of connected and distributed systems more extensively. And data, of course, data processing and data located close to users, so there's low delay on services. The fourth thing is that the technical deployment in different geographical areas, so urban, rural, regional, national, international levels. And the last thing is about the Wi-Fi. So currently Wi-Fi reaches already in densely populated regions capacity constraints, such like case of London Metro, high passenger traffic in frequency bands. So it causes additionally higher demand for 5G and we should focus on more on communication, new communication technologies. And then about the recommendation on standardizations. Since MAAS focus on the integration of different data and services and hence fostering the provision of an sort of all-in-one accessible solution for end users, common standards on different levels derived from the requirements coming from the technical system architecture need to be considered providing scalable and easy to access MAAS services. So, for example, using common road transport standard DATEX2 is relevant for providing harmonized traffic data and related to information exchange between the stakeholders. Also, data context specification applied to road and public transport for modes for exchanging data are necessary for DATEX2, NetEx Transmodal, SIRI, and both of those DATEX2 for road transport and NetEx or SIRI for public transport allows the exchange of real-time transport information. And of course, fostering the deployment of data content specification and standards on national level is important, as like the deployment of cloud-to-cloud communication standards. So we need to establish a more common data platform for exchanging data and information. And the second last thing on my show is that the digital networks and routing applications, so common digital networks shared between different MAAS actors. So global about the location-based network and exchange in transport infrastructure are needed. And the last thing is about the technical solutions and their management. So provision of expert groups supporting technical deployments within MAAS ecosystem and MAAS system. So we must take new technologies into consideration for further MAAS system involvement. So using Bluetooth or other location-based applications. Thank you.
Okay, this is Lasse Nykänen from VTT, and now we are jumping to the roadmap. Okay, first couple words how to read this our roadmap, and here you can now see our summary of our roadmap, and in next slides I will go in more details. So first of all, we divided this roadmap in 4 categories. We have drivers, markets, MAAS services, and enablers. And we started from this point, like last autumn or this beginning of this year, and we have vision in 2025. And we have divided this roadmap in short time period, and then we have from 4 to 9 years time period. Okay, and to point out some from this roadmap, we have here in drivers, we have some drivers come more outside the transport sector, and then we have also some that are coming inside the transport sector. Like we have very tight environmental requirements at the moment, so those are pushing to develop the transport system very fastly at the moment. And then on the other hand, we have automation, which is arising, and now all the car companies are competing, which are bringing the automated cars or automated buses in the streets. And then in the driver's side, we would like to also highlight the collaboration. We should make collaboration, and it is pushed now from the many stakeholders. And also one driver that we would like to highlight is the public funding. It is decreasing, and that's why we need to develop some more efficient solutions for a transport sector. And on the market side, I can say that the role of data is rising, and now we can say that who owns the data or who has the data is the king. So the role of data is very important in the future, and in like a couple of years the role will increase even. And also in the market we see that P2P services, so for peer-to-peer services, those are coming, and in Vision we see that they are already very common in the transport sector. And when we jump to MAAS services, we think that there will be quite good mix of these public and private services. So there will be public transportation, and then private people will offer their own solutions to the transport. We see that the one-stop shop services or one-stop shop principles will come, and which is the main idea in the MAAS services will come there in maybe in after 3 years, and then there will have you will get a lot of services behind the one application or one service provider. We also see that in the MAAS services the demand responsible transport services will come, and they are in Vision we see that they are like the future. So demand responsible transport service will be very efficient, and that's why people are and actors are now going to develop more demand responsible transport services. In enablers, we see that academia or research and development actors, they have now some funding there, but their role will also come because they must make evaluations for data and all that kind of things. And we see also that MAAS will be integrated in other sectors like in social or healthcare services. So those will also increase the importance of transport services when they are integrated to the other sectors. And now in next slides we will go in more details. Okay, so here you can see the drivers. Here are some more bullet points listed that was there in that summary roadmap. So all the things that are marked with italics was rated in very significant or most important in our workshops. So in driver sector, in drivers, we can see that the policy and regulation sector is very important. They have the most bullet points, and they have a very big role to push the MAAS development forward. And when we jump to the markets, you can see here, of course, the business sector is very important here. So business sector must develop new services. They must bring those available for customers, and they must integrate the old services together and offer that one-stop shop principle for customers. We also see that the social and culture sector is important because people has to be able to change their way they are thinking, and they must be able to jump in this MAAS world and be able to change maybe away from their own private car to use more public transportation or some other transport services that are available via MAAS. And yeah, to mention that in this when we have this more detailed roadmap, we have divided all these actions in the academy and research development, in the business sector, and in infrastructure and built environment, and policy and regulation, and technology and data, and in social and culture. So we have used these kind of subcategories to make this a little bit simplified or more clear to the reader. And all these you can find from our deliverables also. And now when we jump to the MAAS services, of course here also the business sector is very important, and we believe that we should go in this MAAS development via pilots, small, or some pilots could be a little bit bigger, but with the pilots we get more experiment and we get the real data how the system is working when the MAAS services are coming there. So we see that pilots are very important, and when we go in 4 to 9 years, those pilots should be combined and they should be maybe bigger and go closer to that one-stop shop principle. And of course, when we have there more pilots, or when they are maybe coming to the service already, there will be someday also competition between those service providers. And also here in this MAAS service, like I said, that data will be in very important role in future. We see that this my data will be very important, and we see that it will develop already now in the next couple 3 years, but maybe in 4 to 9 years we have their real concept defined, and then we can really use that my data in the transport sector. And then in enablers, policy and regulation, they have very big role here, because they must make clear rules and regulations how we can develop our transport services, and that's why policy and regulation should be quite proactive in this sector, because what they are now making will affect the companies in the next couple of years. So already now they should implement or adapt these MAAS actions or MAAS related regulations in their own policy making decisions. Also, how to adapt this sharing economy, because it's in a very big role in MAAS development. We should have a real legislation for how to use shared economy, and what is its role, who has to take care of it, who has responsibilities in sharing economy and all that. So all those should be already implemented in the regulation and making laws. And also automation. Now we are talking that in some streets it's legal to test already automated cars, but how it goes in other countries, and is it only for some roads, or is it allowable for all the streets? So automation is one thing that is coming. It's also related to that demand responsible transport. Can we use those small buses, or how we can solve those last mile problems, which are quite often pointed out in transport sector. Okay, and then we go to the roles. Yeah, in this project we have identified these quite top-level stakeholder groups, and we have divided these in national authorities, and then we go more lower or down to the first last there is end user. So here you can see national road authorities and ministries and government parties. So what they roles and responsibilities have, that they should have put good or investments or incentives in the right places, and they should be enablers, so they should allow and make it possible to use these new kind of solutions and how to adapt this sharing economy or sharing solutions to the transport sector. And they are also taking care about the laws and regulations, so that's why they are in a very big role in this whole development game. And now when we go a little bit down, we have these local authorities, which are very important because they are the parties who typically put this all this development and all the regulations and the goals what are set for transport sector in action. So they have usually they have the money, they are buying these services in the cities or in the some regions or municipalities. So they should know what they are buying and when they are buying or when they are investing in some new services. But they should also take care about the transport system because if they are only doing concentrating on small solutions or optimizing only some part in the cities, the whole system is not optimized, and that will be a problem in the future. So they should be aware what is happening there and what are their possibilities. And then we have this new player here, this MAAS operator, and we see that MAAS operator is more like an integrator or a new player in the game who is combining these these old services together. MAAS operator is maybe working as a salesman, so he should promote and sell these new services via this one-stop shop principle, and he should also be the author who is who can make all this collaboration possible. So he should glue these old stakeholders together and push those to the same directions. And then when we go to the transport service providers, yeah, here we have some old and very traditional stakeholders like public transportation operators, rail operators, taxi operators. But then we have these new players also here like bike sharing and car clubs sharing, rental companies and ride sharing companies. And now for these stakeholders, these transport service provider stakeholders, they are now competing, maybe the competition is now harder and they are competing together with the same customers, but now they are dividing those customers for more companies. So that's why this mass markets will also affect on them. But their role in this whole MAAS picture is very important because typically they are the only stakeholder who faces the end users. So they should also be very good in how to serve customers and how to face and talk with the customers. So we should take care about their role also in the future. And then we have logistics service providers, and their role in this MAAS picture is to bring the logistics know-how for this MAAS development and also provide the logistics services for these passenger transport service providers, or to combine those two modes. And then when we jump to the mobile service provider, yeah, like Jenny said earlier, these are the new players also maybe in this picture, which are coming via digitalization. So they are bringing new technologies and new services, maybe mobile applications or that kind of services, mobile ticketing or combining these different services that transport operators are providing together, and that way offering new, maybe better and better service quality. And then we have end users. Of course, we as end users, we are responsible which service will fly. So we should change our way of thinking. We should be maybe more open to test new services and take care about, for example, our carbon footprint and all that. And also, of course, we can also offer our own resources for this game. For example, we are sharing economy. And then funding agencies, they should provide financial support for this development. And at this point, when all the MAAS players are quite small and they are more like pilots, of course, this is some kind of risks investments, but we should provide those if we want that there really will be some new services or real development in the future. In academia sector, they should provide good and natural evaluations for these pilots. They should make calculations how they are affecting in the big picture, what are the emissions, how this is affecting on the road congestions and all that. And of course, they should also look what is happening in them after maybe 10 to 20 years. And then OEMs and resellers, so these automations and sharing economy things and all this, these are recording new technologies. So these should also, these stakeholders should put this in the factory lines already. Maybe we need some new ways how to open cars, or can we open our car locks via cell phones or something like that. So those should be implemented soon in factory lines, because it takes of course so many years to bring those new cars or new vehicles in the streets. Okay.
Okay, then it's Jenny Eckhart again. So I'm gonna tell you about the next steps, what should be done in the field of MAAS. So as it has been said, MAAS is quite new. There are pilots and services, but we need a lot of more, because we need to benchmark the best practices. We need to see what works well and what doesn't work, and so we can make the services larger of those good practices that we have found. And we also need to understand the contextual factors. We need to understand the ecosystem of MAAS and all the experiences we have got from MAAS pilots and services, and also about the knowledge regarding MAAS. The evaluation should be based on quantitative and qualitative data, and so that we can find impacts of MAAS on different levels: user level, business level, societal levels. And like this is a new concept, there's a lot of expectations how MAAS is going to affect, what kind of impact it will have. There are a lot of hopes to congestions and pollution, emissions, and cost savings. And at the moment it's a speculation because we have so little data available. So we need more data. The roadmap we just presented, it should be updated quite soon again, so we can see that in which direction MAAS will go in the future, because now the roadmap is made based on the information and experiences we have so far, but like we are going to have a lot of more new pilots and services and experiences in the short term, in the coming years. So we should to do again this kind of similar roadmap to update it. Then we also need guidance. People need information. They should know that what kind of services are available. They need to know the best practices. They need to know that why MAAS services would be good solutions. And also there should be incentives and regulations enabling and helping to develop MAAS. Collaboration is really essential in MAAS, as it's an ecosystem. A lot of actors need to be combined together to create multimodal and MAAS services that have different kind of other things. It might have in addition to transport services, there might be some kind of like events or some kind of activities combined to these kind of MAAS services, and there might be also freight services and different kind of deliveries added to MAAS services. So we need national and international collaboration. We need for policy making, regulations, technical interoperability, and many issues. But also business sector need to collaborate within the business sector, and also public sector need to collaborate within the public sector. But also business and public sector need to collaborate, and then we have this public-private people partnership. So as a private people will also be offering sharing services and some other services also. So they're also producing services in the MAAS ecosystem. So it needs the collaboration of all the actors involved in the MAAS ecosystem. And finally, we have a slide about the information, where you can find information about this project. So in the end of the slide you can see the project websites. So there we already have 2 of our deliverables, so deliverable number 3 and 4, and deliverables number 2 and 5, they should be by the end of this week in our web pages. And we have also published some journal and conference papers, and we have so far we have so here we have listed the ones that were there last year, but there will be more papers, for example in ITS conferences. Okay, so thank you for participating in this webinar, and now we have time for questions if you want to ask any questions, and so just please unmute yourself if you want to ask any questions. Okay, it's quite silent here. So, okay, if there are no questions, we can end the seminar now, but we will leave our connection open, so if there's still some people who would like to discuss about MAAS after we have stopped the recording. Okay.